for the theater then. But in America, in '55, we toured 6 months. I had the honor and the pleasure to get the Emmy Award for my first television appearance in '55, '56. But there was not a special youth who was so interested in that art form. It was discovered. There was no example in America of this form as I produced it in '55. Then as we came back every 2 years through all America, touring, go west and north, east and south, we became, maybe I became one of the most traveled French actor, certainly as a French, certainly the most, but even as an American, if I would be an American citizen, I don't think that many actors traveled so far as we did, really through all university towns, colleges, and legitimate theater. And this has created suddenly a renaissance of the art form, and there's a whole new generation who has been influenced by it, and now there are many mime companies. Now, to predict how they will develop on their own, to predict how it comes out, this belongs to you, to the press, to belong to the public, to see and to compare and to see where it's going. But I assure you, there is much life now about mime in America.
Could you show us, when you're working with students, could you show us a basic exercise that you might start with working with students, and then something more specific?
I said one day, 2 terms which are very important, I think, for the art. When I mime the wind, I become the wind. When I mime a fish, I throw myself into the sea. What does this mean? That you have to breathe and to create the element in such a way that you have to carry the weight of the fish. You become the fish, the weight of the wind, and this is the secret of our art. As a dancer leaps into the air, as a singer carries his sound and grows with the sound, as the magic of our civilization goes through space, through expansion, we have to expand in time, we have to expand with our weight, and we have not to stay in our blood and flesh on the ground. We have to create, through the gesture, a slow motion of poetry. We have to create our own weight, what I call the mime weight. This is why the public feels suddenly he belongs to another world. He's carried through the same weight. He identifies, and this is a whole grammar of mime, which has to be learned through a school and through what we created. And this is why I don't think that mime can develop through natural invention, in a sense where there is no recording of an art explosion which comes without roots. Never a country can be created without its roots, and never an art form can be created without the roots too. This is why the grammar of mime is important, and the grammar of the words with which we speak. And if you ask me how to show, I would say school. They have to learn first to breathe, they have to learn how to expand a gesture, they have to learn a grammar of gestures for the head, for the neck, for the chest, until the toes, the fingers, like in the Indian mudra, which has 48 situations of hand expressions. We have stylized 7 to 8 expressions of the hands. If I do the classical hand, if I do la main orientale, you see, if I recreate this movement, or la trille for the butterfly, for instance, or this for a violin, or this for a cage, or this, we have to create all the lyrical movement which would be. Then we go in the hand of the Renaissance. If I do this, everybody who has been in a museum identifies with the hand of the Renaissance. This is why it is so important, and this is so important. If we take the Bible, which is a fantastic source of vision, and we take the Passion of Christ, it would be fantastic in mime, because even the Mass is a way, has a symbolic style of mime. I bend you, I have even a number called the hands which shows good and evil, the struggle of good and evil, the hand which benefits, the hand which gives, then, and the hand which takes, and the struggle between good and evil which rejoice for a prayer. Now, it is a certain aspect of mysticism, and I think this is an important force, because if man believes in a better world, or he believes that man can redeem through art, through faith, I think the world can be saved. But I'm not the only one who prays for that. But I think art contributes very much to the understanding of people and going back to their own roots, to their own self. Like the Indian philosophy, you know, we have learned from them too. I think today we live in a fantastic world, in a sense, because we have understood much more about other cultures. We were engrossed in our own culture before, and now we are involved with all the cultures of the world, and we can create our own synthèse from it. Is this to answer your question?
Thank you very much.
You mentioned the mask maker, where your body is doing something different in your face, or the one that you just mentioned, where the right hand is operating for the good and the left hand for the evil. Do you find this difficult to do mentally? I mean,
yes.
That the body is pulling in one direction and the face is a stunning metaphor. It's like poetry.
I think that if you ask a magician how he can create magic to make appear and disappear props and people, it's of course an illusion. And maybe what is important is the source. I don't think that a person is one. We want always to create the unity of one, to go back to the Om, to the one. But we are so multiple before we find the one. And maybe the actor is a part of the distance. It's insane. When you have no control over your emotions, then you are...
Do you have any fears of distortion?
Excuse me?
Do you have any fears of distortion of your art through commercialization as it becomes
yes.
more popular?
Well, this is true. It would be dangerous. I think it would be important to the American public to do and see the purity of the art. They see only the commercial way of presenting something which not, they will not get maybe the purity of. We shot in Nebraska last year 2 programs of 1 hour for PBS, showing really the pure. We'll have the opportunity also to introduce the art in education and PBS, because what you say could be very dangerous, because if it becomes to sell a product, if you start doing mime to do anything, then the public will just not know that's an art form anymore. And this is a danger.
Somehow commercials that do use mime, though, take on a dignity that others don't seem to have.
Well, I would never do a commercial if I had to, well, I say the word, to prostitute myself in a certain way. But this is, somebody was laughing on the door. Yeah, what do you say?
Huck a product is what I'm saying.
Well, maybe.
I was interested in your behind that thing any minute. How do you change that character so infinitesimally behind that screen?
Well, it's impossible to tell how.
I know it is.
Somebody asked if my thumb can do that, you know, and I said I fell from the 2nd floor of my house when I was a child. I think there is an inborn part which is in you. I think the most difficult is not to do it. The most difficult is to conceive it. I remember a small anecdote. Do you know the story of Columbus and the egg? They tell, I was not there, but they tell that Columbus saw one night, he was going in a, I wouldn't say a nightclub, I would say he was going in a, what could you say, in a tavern at that time, you know, where they had brawls and where they're fighting, you know, with somebody was looking somebody else, and you draw your third and you were just starting to fight. And Columbus was in the midst of his travels, and he was, I couldn't say if it was in Italy. He went out and saw, how do you say, Marines, sea people who were bargaining about an egg, how to make an egg roll and stand. And they couldn't make it stand. Then Columbus approaches himself, makes a little tick-tick, and the egg stands like this. Then a man says to him, "Well, it's not difficult." He said, "Yes, but you didn't think about it." He said, "It's true." And very often you see things which becomes evident, but the conception is difficult. To conceive it is difficult more than the physical, because this is part of the training. Because I thought what is interesting is to see how Chaplin did it in the film and how he did it in the theater, which is completely different. In the film, he had to make his sermon. How do you say sermon? The French word. When you make the sermon, when you speak about to the fidèles, to the people who go to the church, sermon, yes. It's like saying table, table. And then he said in silent words, I will tell you the story of a guy, a nice little guy called David. He described the big one, but there was no screen, and the way he did it was fantastic, but because it belonged to the reality of the film, to the situation. But what was more fantastic is when it was done, he went to get money from the fidèles, from the people who were in the church, and he was feeling if it was heavy or not. And when somebody didn't give much, when somebody gave, he said, thank you. And somebody didn't give much, he did. You see, he made a fantastic pantomime about the weight of the money, yes. And I found out through Chaplin how to do it differently in the theater. If I would imitate a Chaplin, nobody would have understood it because it would have been too simple. It was fantastic in film technique. But for the theater, you have to recreate a complete other symbolism, another illusion. And this is the difference between mime in the theater and mime in film.
Broader in the theater? Broader?
It's broader in the movement, in the style itself, in the bodywork itself. You see? In that sense, more stylized. You see? If Chaplin would have seen David and Goliath, maybe his David and Goliath would have been different than it was. It's interesting to see also that there is another number I do called the skater. Chaplin does the skater on a real ice, and really he skates. He has to skate with a policeman behind him, and he skates really very well. If I mime a skater, I have to create on wood the illusion of ice. And you will see in the PBS film I did Bibi as a skater, and you have just two white cubes. And he pretends to skate and he cannot skate, and he's sliding on, but then I create the illusion of skating, and the floor is white like snow, and I began to skate, and you have the feeling I skate, but it's on wood. You see, this is a great difference between films and movies. In the movies, the illusion has to be real. In the theater, you create reality through the illusion.
I've heard that once you're in makeup, that you never. What would you do if he discovered a fire backstage?
I would say, hell, hell, fire, fire, he would say. It was funny, when Mel Brooks asked me in silent movie, have you seen silent movie? To say no. I said to Mel, listen Mel, just to be Marcel Marceau and say no, everybody can do it. I want to do it if I have a scene which shows mime, and then I will say no. If not, it's not interesting. And Mel was very nice. He was wonderful because he understood that. And then we invented the scene of going against the wind when the telephone rings. And I think what was funny more than the no was until he reaches the phone number to walk against the wind, you see? And they're waiting and waiting and waiting, and at the end, when he's entangled and everything, he says, no, but he says it, you see?
Marcel, the artist, what does he still hope to achieve?
Well, what I hope to achieve, I think I have hoped just to find my public. And this was one hope. Here it's finished, you see? I think that I hope to achieve to have communicated in those 30 years. Without speaking one word, I was understood from all the publics in the whole world, from all races, all nations, and I was clearly understood which word would never do. And I had never in the public somebody say to me, shut up. or had never an incident, somebody throwing something at me. You never know what's happening when 3,000 people are every night in a show. And I have never been disturbed by a bad joke. And certainly in 3,000 people, you have different characters of all kinds. And I always felt a unity and emotion and silence. I've played before in prisons, before criminals. Well, it's quite something to do it in a certain way. I have played in hospitals. I have played before the regular public who is free. I have played in open doors. I have played through all seasons. And I've always fantastic impressions. Only anecdotes to tell which can be funny or sad. Witness storms through the air with planes. We went through hell and paradise at the same time. And this is one part of the dream which really has been fulfilled. And if I die tomorrow, I know that this has been done. But what I want to achieve is to create a compagnie de mime again. Because in my life, I was not always a lonely man. I had a company for 12 years with which we produced complete mime theaters. And Beep and the Lonely Man was among the characters in his lonely parts, if you want. Like ballet does, you know, they have separate mime dramas, and I did the Overcoat by Gogol. I produced Don Juan by Molière, adapted for pantomime. I produced Candide by Voltaire with the Opera of Hamburg. I produced 30 shows, 30 mime drama shows. And the company split, as it is in life. You split sometimes.